Under the deep blue of a calm summer sky, Ethan Cole sat in his small apartment staring at the television as the news anchor's voice trembled over a breaking alert sirens were echoing through New York traffic, but not because of war or weather, but because something impossible had just appeared in the heavens, a line of golden light stretching from horizon to horizon like a wound in the sky. Millions of people across the world saw it at the exact same moment, from the deserts of Nevada to the streets of Tokyo, and for a few seconds the whole planet stood still, as if holding its breath. Ethan felt a sudden jolt run through his chest, his heartbeat thundering in his ears, and before he could move, his hands flashed with a soft golden glow. The light lasted barely a blink, yet it left a deep burning sensation in his skin, as if something ancient had just woken inside him. Confusion, panic, and awe mixed together on every face he saw outside his window. Neighbors poured into the street, pointing upward as the sky shimmered with faint ripples like heat over asphalt. Phones rang constantly, voices shouting over each other, some crying, some praying, and some laughing, as if they had just witnessed a miracle. Ethan turned back to the TV just as the image on the screen twisted into static, then reformed into a single pair of glowing eyes. They were not human yet. They felt as if they were staring directly into his soul. A calm voice, older than time, filled every speaker, every phone. Every device on Earth saying the locks are broken. The gods you were are returning. The voice paused long enough for the words to sink in before adding coordinates spoken in a strange rhythm that felt both alien and familiar. Then the screen went black, leaving only the heavy silence of millions holding their breath. Outside, a man shouted about seeing people collapse in the park. Others whispered about flashes of light inside their own bodies. Ethan's head throbbed with questions: what locks? What gods? And why him? His door rattled suddenly, and when he opened it, his elderly neighbor Mara Vance stood there, eyes sharp and knowing, as if she had been waiting for this day her whole life. She ignored his greeting and simply said, "I know what's happening, and you're not ready for it," before stepping inside. She spoke in a low, urgent tone, explaining that she had worked for the government decades ago on a classified project about human potential, and that this event was not random, but the first phase of something the world had forgotten. She told him of old myths where humans were not fragile creatures but beings of pure energy who shaped mountains with thought and could walk between stars like stepping stones. These myths were dismissed as fantasy, but she insisted they were memory. The golden flash was a key turning in a lock buried in human blood. Ethan felt dizzy, the glow in his hands returning for a second longer, this time bright enough to cast shadows on the wall. Outside, more shouts rose in the street as a man suddenly lifted several feet into the air before collapsing, screaming that he saw places that didn't exist. Mara said the coordinates in the message pointed to the middle of the Pacific Ocean, a place where no island existed on any map. But she believed something ancient and dangerous was hidden there, and that those coordinates were calling people like him to it. Ethan didn't want to believe her yet. The warmth in his veins told him she was right. The power inside him felt alive, restless like a predator waiting to be freed. Then the ground trembled just slightly enough to make the glass on the table rattle. Ethan froze because he knew it wasn't an earthquake he had been thinking. About the moment the sky tore open about the golden light, and as that thought sharpened, the floor had moved. It was impossible. Yet the truth was burning in his mind. He had caused it. Mara saw the shock in his eyes and only said softly, "It has begun." Ethan sat frozen, his breath shallow as Mara's words wrapped around him like a net, pulling him deeper into a truth he was not ready to face. The hum of the city outside felt distant, as if the world had shifted into another layer of reality. She moved through his apartment with a strange confidence, scanning his shelves, his books, even the small magnets on his refrigerator, as if each object could betray a hidden secret. "You think you live an ordinary life," she said without looking at him. "But you are standing on the edge of something older than human history. The surge is not a gift, Ethan. It is a signal, a trigger placed inside our blood long before you or I were born. Ethan tried to speak, but the memory of the light in his hands stole his words instead. He asked about the coordinates. Mara finally turned to him, her eyes hard and unblinking, the middle of the Pacific. She said more than 500 miles from any known landmass, there is a trench deeper than Everest is tall. The first. Deep sonar scans decades ago found shapes there that no geology could explain. The team I worked with believed they were ruins older than any civilization, but before we could investigate, the area was declared off-limits by every major power on Earth. Ethan frowned. Ruins under the ocean. You think that's where the voice came from? Mara shook her head. The voice didn't come from there. It was unlocked from there. Those coordinates point to the key chamber, the place built to hold the last. Relics of what we used to be. Ethan felt a knot forming in his chest. He thought of the glowing sky, the strangers collapsing, the man in the street who had floated for a moment before screaming, could there be millions like him now? People changing. In ways no one could predict, the television flickered again. But this time it wasn't the eyes from before. Instead, it was a patchwork of live feeds from across the globe. People in Brazil summoning rain over a drought-stricken town, a child in Moscow moving a metal chair without touching it, a woman in Cairo walking barefoot through fire-unharmed news anchors tried to stay calm, but fear was creeping into their voices. Governments had begun setting up special containment centers for the awakened, as they were now being called. Mara told Ethan that this was exactly what she had feared. The awakening would not happen slowly or in secret. It would ripple through the world, and every government would see it as a threat power this great. Has always been feared, Ethan, she said, and fear always leads to control or destruction. Ethan paced his living room, his hands shaking, not from fear, but from the strange energy buzzing beneath his skin. It felt alive, as if it were aware of him testing him. Mara reached into her coat and pulled out an old folder thick with yellowed pages, and faded photographs inside were grainy images of massive stone halls carved with human figures, towering like giants, and symbols that glowed faintly even in the black and white photos. These, she said, were taken from a remote probe in the trench. The carvings match legends from more than a dozen cultures that never had contact with one another. They tell the same story. Humans were not born on Earth, came here after a war among the stars. A war we lost to protect the universe from us. Our power was locked away in our DNA. The ruins were built as a prison and a warning. Ethan stared at the photos. The figures in the carvings looked human, but their eyes burned with the same golden light he had seen in the sky. He could almost feel their gaze piercing him through the paper. Mara said the surge means the lock is breaking naturally after thousands of years. But something else will come with it. The ones who put us in chains will not let us rise again. Ethan's phone buzzed violently. A message from an unknown number pulsed across the screen in golden letters. Come to the coordinates alone. No explanation. No sender, just the words repeating, over and over. He looked at Mara, but she only whispered. Then, they found you before he could ask who they was. A sharp pounding rattled his front door. Ethan's stomach tightened. Mara gestured for him to stay silent, but the pounding grew louder, more deliberate. Then came the sound of metal bending, as if the doorframe itself was being forced apart. Ethan's skin burned, the golden light flaring in his hands unbidden. The final blow sent the door flying inward, and 3 figures stepped inside. They were human, but their eyes glowed with faint silver. Not gold. They wore dark suits with no markings and moved with unnatural precision. The one in front spoke in a cold, clipped tone. Ethan Cole, you will come with us immediately. Mara stepped, between them her voice firm. You're too early. He's not ready. The leader tilted his head slightly as if listening to something Ethan couldn't hear, and then said quietly, Readiness is irrelevant. The order has been given. Ethan's pulse roared. In his ears, the light from his hands spilling across the walls, and for a single moment he felt it again, that impossible pull inside him like the earthquake before, only stronger. His apartment trembled, glasses falling from shelves as the air seemed to hum. Mara's voice cut through the chaos. "Ethan, don't fight them yet. You don't even know what you are," but the energy was already surging through him, faster than thought, faster than fear, and in that moment he realized the silver-eyed strangers weren't here to protect him. They were here to take him somewhere he might never return from. The silver-eyed strangers closed in their footsteps, soundless against the trembling floor. Ethan's breath came fast, the golden light in his hands flaring brighter until it filled the small apartment. In a deep molten glow, the leader raised a hand as if to signal the others, but before he could speak, Mara moved faster than human eyes should see, her body a blur. As she slammed her palm against the leader's chest, a shockwave burst outward, knocking all three strangers into the wall. Ethan's mouth went dry. "You're one of them," he whispered, but Mara didn't answer. She only grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the hallway. "Come on now, we run." They sprinted down the stairwell, the air charged with a strange electric taste like the moment. Before lightning strikes, Ethan's mind spun with questions, but Mara's urgency left no space for words. Outside, the city felt wrong. People were standing in the streets staring at the sky as faint gold threads of light drifted down like slow-moving. The threads touched the skin of some passers-by, making them glow faintly for a moment before fading away. Mara muttered under her breath, "It's spreading faster than I thought." Ethan barely had time to process before a black, unmarked van screeched. Around the corner, the side door sliding open to reveal more silver-eyed figures. Mara shoved him toward an alley, moving with an agility that no ordinary person her age should have. They weaved through back streets until they reached the edge of an old industrial dock where a weather-worn building sagged over the water. Inside, hidden beneath a tarp, was a sleek, deep-sea research sub. Unlike anything Ethan had seen in documentaries, its hull shimmered faintly as though coated with liquid glass. Mara yanked the tarp free, revealing its strange design. "You said you wanted answers," she said. "This is where they are." The coordinates point to a temple at the bottom of the Pacific. It's the only place the voice could have come from. Ethan blinked. "The bottom of the ocean. Are you serious?" Mara was already climbing into the vessel, her movements sure and practiced. "We don't have a choice. The surge has made you visible now. They will never stop hunting you unless we find out why." Ethan hesitated, but the sound of distant sirens and approaching engines left him little choice. He climbed aboard the sub, and the hatch sealed behind them with a low hiss. The cabin lights glowed a dim amber as Mara guided the vessel into the dark waters, leaving. The city lights behind the surface fell away into blackness. The only sound, the hum of the engines and the soft creak of pressure on the hull. Hours passed as the sub descended deeper than Ethan thought possible until the navigation screen lit up with shapes beneath them, jagged structures jutting from the sea floor, impossible in size and geometry. Mara slowed their approach until they hovered before a colossal stone doorway, nearly half a mile high. Veins of golden light pulsed faintly across its surface, like the heartbeat of something alive. The carvings matched the ones Ethan had seen in Mara's photographs, humans as towering energy forms, surrounded by spirals of stars. As they drew closer, the golden light began to react too. The sub glowing brighter in slow, rhythmic pulses. Mara whispered, "It knows we're here," before Ethan could respond. A sudden flash of silver streaked past the viewport, followed by another, then another tall humanoid shapes moving through the water. Faster than any submarine lights swept across the hull, blinding for an instant before the sub jolted hard as if struck. The controls sparked. Mara cursed under her breath, and then they appeared outside the viewport, in full view silver-skinned beings. with elongated limbs and blade-like arms, their eyes burning with cold blue light. One of them pressed its face close to the glass, its mouth unmoving. Yet a voice filled the cabin. "You must turn back. If the gods awaken, the universe will burn again." Ethan stared in shock at the alien creature. The voice was calm, but carried a weight of ancient warning. Mara met its gaze and said quietly, "You were the wardens, weren't you?" The voice replied, "We are still the wardens, keepers of the lockbreakers, of the god seed. You were not meant to remember." Ethan's chest tightened, the golden light in his hands flickering as if in answer to the alien's presence. He asked, "Why are you stopping us?" The warden's eyes narrowed. "Because you are not ready. And because if the lock opens, nothing in the stars will be safe again." The sub shook violently as another warden struck its side. Mara gritted her teeth and engaged the sub's hidden propulsion system. The vessel lurched forward toward the golden doorway, the wardens swarming alongside them. Ethan felt the energy within him surge like a living thing pressing against his skin. The golden veins on the doorway began to blaze brighter, the carvings shifting subtly as if reacting to his presence. The water vibrated with a deep resonant hum, and then the doorway began to open, splitting down the middle to reveal a vast corridor of light stretching into the depths beyond. Mara steered them inside, ignoring the wardens who hovered at the threshold, watching with unreadable expressions as the massive doors closed behind them, sealing them in darkness. Except for the golden glow ahead, Ethan could feel it now in his bones, a pull deeper and deeper into the temple, as though something inside was calling him by name, and with every meter they descended, the voice in his mind grew clearer. Not Mara's, not his own, but something far older waiting for him to arrive. The golden corridor swallowed them whole, the water thick with shimmering particles that drifted like slow sparks. Ethan sat rigid in his seat, every nerve in his body tuned to the strange pulse beating through the walls. It wasn't just sound. It was a vibration that sank into his bones, a deep rhythm that felt alive. Mara guided the sub with steady hands, her face unreadable as the tunnel curved downward into darkness. The glow intensified, painting the walls with scenes carved in impossible detail. Humans not as they were now, but as towering beings of light. Their forms, fluid and radiant, walking among alien worlds. The carvings shifted as the light passed over them, almost like they were moving, as though fragments of memory were playing on the stone. Ethan leaned closer, watching as one scene unfolded into a battle. The radiant humans unleashing storms, fire, and shattering mountains, while ships of impossible size burned in alien skies. It was beautiful and terrible, the vision so vivid that for a moment he forgot he was looking at carvings. The hum grew louder, until it seemed to fill his skull, and suddenly his vision blurred, replaced by a cascade of images so real he gasped. He was no longer in the sub, but standing on the surface of a red desert under a black sky where two suns glowed faintly above him. He could feel the wind, the heat, the vibration of the ground. As massive machines moved across the horizon in front of him, stood others like himself, glowing beings speaking in a language he somehow understood. They were preparing for war. Then came the betrayal. One of their own striking down the leader with a single burst of searing white light. The scene exploded into chaos, worlds burning, oceans boiling, cities collapsing into ash, and then a darkness so deep it swallowed the stars. Ethan jerked back into the sub, drenched in sweat, his hands glowing faintly. Mara didn't look at him. She had seen this before. "The temple doesn't just show you the past, it makes you live it," she said. "And what you saw was the war that ended us." Ethan struggled to steady his breath. "They locked us away because we were dangerous, not because we were weak." Mara nodded. "The wardens were part of the coalition that defeated us. They stripped away what we were and buried it deep in our DNA, waiting for it to fade with time, but the lock never vanished, only slept." Ethan asked what had broken it. Mara hesitated. Something in the cosmic weave shifted. Maybe a natural cycle, Maybe something out there wanted it opened again. Either way, the surge is unstoppable. Now the corridor opened into a massive chamber, the ceiling lost in shadows, the walls lined with immense pillars etched with spirals of gold at the center, floated a crystal the size of a small car suspended in mid-water, its surface alive with shifting light patterns like galaxies swirling in miniature. Ethan felt his chest tighten as the pull became almost unbearable. Mara brought the sub to a halt, just outside the crystal's glow, that is the memory core. She said it holds the story of everything. We were, and everything we feared to become, before Ethan could respond. The crystal blazed with sudden light, and the chamber dissolved around him. He was standing on Earth, but not the Earth. He knew the continents were different. The skies were full of silver spires and floating cities, and everywhere radiant humans moved like living stars. The memory shifted, showing the birth of something called the God Seed, a creation meant to focus all their scattered power into a single chosen ruler. One voice to unite them all, but the seed was corrupted by ambition. The chosen turned tyrant, and the war began again. The coalition decided there would never be another chosen. The seed was split and hidden across worlds, but one fragment remained here, waiting for the right mind. The vision snapped away, and Ethan was back in the sub, the crystal pulsing faster now as if recognizing him. Mara was watching closely, her eyes reflecting the light. "It's reacting to you," she said quietly before Ethan could speak. The chamber trembled, a shadow sweeping across the walls from the far end. Emerged the wardens moving with slow, deliberate motions, their voices echoing through the water. "You should not be here, human. The lock must hold." Mara stepped forward. In her seat, "We are past that point. The surge has begun nothing. We'll stop it." The leader warden turned his gaze to Ethan, his voice sharper. "You carry the call of the God Seed. It will destroy you and your world." Ethan's mind. The chamber groaned around them, the golden carvings fracturing under the strain. As the red light from the crystal pulsed faster and faster, Ethan's skin burned with the glow rushing up his arms into his chest, his heartbeat pounding like a drum. In sync with the crystal's rhythm, Mara's voice cut through the noise. "We have to leave now." But the voice in Ethan's mind grew louder, drowning her out. It was not just sound, it was thought and emotion flooding into him, waves of certainty, power, and memory. It showed him the world above, not as it was now, but as it could be, cities of light. Weather shaped by thought hunger and disease, gone in an instant, all under the guidance of one mind. His mind, it whispered, "You are the chosen, you are. The ascendant." His breath came fast, not from fear, but from the raw need to accept the offer, to open the door fully to whatever this seed was. Mara grabbed his arm, shaking him. "Focus, Ethan. This is how it starts. It makes you see only what you want. Not the cost," but her words were drowned out by a new sound, a deep cracking, like the earth itself splitting. The far wall of the chamber tore apart as something massive forced its way. In the water, churned in violent spirals as a shape emerged from the shadows. It was not like the wardens. This being was alive in a way that felt primal. Its body a shifting mass of black tendrils wrapped around a core of molten red. Its eyes, twin slits of blinding white light. It moved with slow, terrible grace, and when it spoke, the water itself vibrated. "The seed is mine." Mara cursed under her breath. "Cathar." She said the name like it was poison. The being laughed, a low grinding sound that made Ethan's bones ache. The wardens were fools to keep it hidden. "You will open to me, boy, and I will burn the stars." Ethan's body locked rigid as the creature's gaze fell on him, his golden glow flaring without his will. The crystal between them pulsed harder, reacting to the tension, two forces pulling at him. One promising unity and rebirth, the other raw, unstoppable power. Mara moved fast, yanking a strange metal sphere from her pack. She hurled it at Cathar, and it exploded into a cloud of shimmering particles that clung to the creature's tendrils. Slowing its advance for a moment, she turned to Ethan. "You have seconds, make a choice. Destroy the seed or merge with it." Ethan's thoughts blurred. The crystal's light was so bright now it was hard to see anything else. His body moved on instinct, pulling him toward it, the water parting around his steps as though obeying him. Mara shouted something, but it was distant. Muffled, he reached out his fingers, brushing the surface of the crystal, and the world vanished in a blaze of gold. He was standing in a vast field under a sky split with storms, and in front of him was a figure of pure light shaped like him, yet older, taller eyes burning with ancient fire. It spoke without moving its lips. "I am the seed. I am the will of your kind. I have waited through the fall and the chains, and now I am whole again." The figure stepped closer, and Ethan felt its presence not as another being, but as a mirror, showing him everything he could be. The seed said, "Merge with me, and the age of gods will rise again." Ethan's heart hammered. He thought of the vision of perfect cities, the end of all suffering, the control over life itself. But then he thought of the war, the betrayal, the burning worlds, and Cathar's promise of ruin. The figure seemed to sense his hesitation. "You fear yourself," it said, "but without me, you will be nothing." He closed his eyes and felt the pull again. This time he didn't resist. He let the seed pour into him, light flooding every nerve, every cell. It was agony and ecstasy, all at once, like being torn apart and remade in the same breath. When his eyes opened, he was back in the chamber, but everything was different. His vision layered with streams of light, tracing the shape of reality itself. Cathar roared the sound, shaking the pillars. As Ethan raised a hand without thought, and the water around the creature froze into jagged spires of gold. Mara stared at him, her face pale. "What have you done?" Ethan didn't answer because in his mind was not just his own voice anymore. The seed spoke with him, its tone darker, colder than before. "The gods have returned." Cathar's tendrils shattered the golden ice, and the two forces collided, the water exploding in a shockwave that sent Mara spinning. Ethan held his ground, his body glowing like a star, every movement effortless, as if the ocean obeyed him. Cathar struck again, but Ethan caught the blow with a single raised hand, the impact cracking the walls further. Each strike they exchanged was like a storm ripping through the chamber. And for a brief moment, Ethan felt the thrill of it, the seed feeding his desire to win, to dominate, but deep in his chest, something twisted an edge to the seed's voice, a hunger that was not his own. Cathar's laughter cut. "Through the clash, you think you control it, boy, but it has already begun to control you." The truth hit like ice, yet the battle gave no space for doubt. The chamber collapsing around them as Cathar's form began to unravel. The wardens appeared. At the edges of the chaos, their silver eyes locked on Ethan, the leader's voice echoing in his head. "If you are truly one of them, prove you can end this before it ends everything." Ethan felt the seed's power surge, begging to be unleashed completely, and for the first time, he wasn't sure if that would save the world or doom it. The temple was collapsing, the golden pillars splintering into shards that spiraled upward as if pulled by some unseen current. Cathar's massive form thrashed in, the center of the chamber, its molten core pulsing like the heart of a dying star. Ethan stood in the chaos, the golden glow around him now burning so bright the water steamed where it touched him. Mara floated nearby, clutching onto a cracked pillar, her eyes fixed on him with a mix of awe and fear. The seed's voice pulsed in his mind, stronger than ever. "You can end him. Now release all that you are." Ethan's chest rose and fell. his thoughts tangled between the need to destroy Cathar and the gnawing awareness that the seed's hunger was not the same as his own. Cathar's voice rolled through the chamber, mocking, even weakened. "You feel it, don't you? The thrill of the fight, the taste of power. You and I are the same." Mara's voice cut in over the roar. "Don't listen to him, Ethan. It's not your voice anymore. That thing inside you wants more than Cathar's end. It wants everything." The wardens emerged from the shadows, their silver forms circling the battle. The leaders, eyes locked on Ethan, "Release the seed's hold, or we will end you both." The threat was sharp, but the seed whispered, "They fear you because you are greater than all of them combined. They chained your kind. Once they will do it again, unless you strike." First, Ethan's heart pounded. Cathar lunged, tendrils whipping through the water, but Ethan moved before the thought had even formed in his mind. Golden spears of light erupted from his hands, pinning Cathar to the wall. The creature writhed, its molten core cracking and spilling red fire into the chamber. The seed urged, "Finish him. Become the true god." Ethan raised his hand, the light swelling into a killing blow, but then his gaze fell on Mara, her face pale. Her hand pressed against the shattered pillar, and in her eyes he saw not fear of Cathar, but fear of him that was enough to make him hesitate. And in that hesitation he realized what terrified him most wasn't Cathar or the wardens. It was the quiet, intoxicating certainty that the seed was right about how easily he could take everything, with a single choice. Cathar laughed even as he strained against the spears. "Strike me down, Ascendant, and I will live in you, in the part of you that enjoys this Ethan's grip." On the spears faltered the golden light flickering. The seed's voice sharpened, "Strike now or lose everything." But instead, Ethan took a deep breath, forcing the golden light to dim, fighting the instinct to obey. Mara shouted, "What are you doing?" Ethan's voice was steady but low. "I'm ending both of us." Cathar's eyes widened in fury as Ethan turned the power inward, shaping it not as a weapon, but as a seal. The golden glow wrapped around his body and Cathar's form, both bound together in a spiral of light. The wardens moved in their voices, clashing with the seeds, as if the air itself was torn between forces. Ethan felt his strength burning away, the seed thrashing in his mind like a trapped beast, the visions of perfect cities, and endless power shattering one by one until there was only darkness. The spiral tightened, crushing Cathar's molten core until it imploded with a soundless flash. The light swallowed the chamber, the ocean, the world, and then Ethan was falling through nothing. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on the cracked floor of the temple, the crystal gone, the carvings dark. Mara was kneeling beside him, her hands shaking as she touched his shoulder. The wardens stood in a half-circle, their silver eyes dim. The leader spoke. "It is done. The god seed sleeps again." Ethan pushed himself up, feeling the absence immediately. The golden light was gone. No hum in his bones, no voice in his mind. He was just human. The leader warden stepped closer. "You have bought your world time, but nothing more." Mara looked at them sharply. How long before something else tries to break it? The warden's gaze shifted to the dark ceiling. "The universe is wide, and the news of this awakening will spread. The purge will come." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Purge? What purge?" But before anyone could answer, the water around them shifted, a vast shadow falling across the temple. The wardens turned their heads toward the source. Mara's eyes widened. Ethan followed her gaze and saw through a distant crack in the ruined doorway a darkness blotting out the faint sunlight above. It was moving slowly, but its size was impossible. It wasn't a ship. It was a continent hanging in the ocean, a massive alien structure, bristling, with spires and glowing scars across its surface, and then came